Welcome to a new Daily Top Askreddit video. Today's topic: what are some huge green flags that are often overlooked? When you're not afraid to disagree with them, because you know they'll actually listen rather than just hurting you. Edit, thanks for the gold and silvers, kind strangers. This is super important, and I try really hard to keep it in mind. Too many of my friends, while they have a whole ton of good qualities, I'm afraid to disagree with them about certain things because I know it's going to turn into a huge bust up. This is me and my complimenting others behind their backs. Alongside that, defending others who aren't there to defend themselves, even when the rest of the group is nodding along with whatever behind their back insult has been brought up. I believe this is a strong demonstration of integrity and loyalty. I would never say this to her face. Bye, she's a wonderful person and a gifted artist. Why wouldn't you say that to her face? When someone admits to their mistake / owning up to it and does not make an excuse for failing, but trying to better themselves through that experience, being positive about it. Does not make an excuse for failing, but tries to better themselves through that experience. Come see my collection of heartaches. He cried. My broken ambitions. The dreams that have died. I'm taking a journey, I'm making a list of chances I've scuppered and shots that I've missed. There's flaws and frustrations, and they're on the shelf. Misfortunes and messes I've made for myself. There's mountains of blunders and bloopers to see. There's fountains of failures completed by me. Come see my collection, I'm sure we'll have fun. We'll browse it together, and then when we're done. He laughed with delight and a shake of his head. I'll show you my wall of successes, he said. That the person is actually listening to you. I was seeing a guy recently and I told him I was feeling anxious about something. We spent 5 minutes having a sort of argument about whether I should be anxious about this situation. Then he stopped talking and said, this clearly isn't working, let's try it differently, and asked me to start the conversation again. I was a bit confused, but the second time, instead of arguing, he asked me questions about how I was feeling and why. I really opened up and realized some things I hadn't thought of before. That's a good listener. He sounds like someone who can adapt. This is something I've been struggling with a lot recently. People used to tell me that I was a good listener and could remember even minor things very well. Now that I have a new job with long shifts, I noticed I find it hard to listen to people and even have to suppress an aggressiveness I didn't used to have. This makes it a little easier for me to understand other people that react aggressively when being talked to after a long shift, but I'm kinda worried I might lose this quality of mine. I have a co-worker that is very good at listening. She will stop what she is doing and shift her entire body posture to listen to you. And maintain eye contact. Not those talking to you while on their phones or computer screen and don't even know if you can hear them. General mindfulness, the little things you don't really notice if you don't pay attention. Pushing a chair in after sitting in it, asking questions and being involved with you. You can learn a lot about somebody by paying attention to how they listen, and having a partner that listens is an absolutely amazing feeling. There is a huge gap between being aware of what you're saying and understanding what you're saying. A good listener is priceless. I never thought about this until I reconnected with an old friend who told me that I was a good listener. His words are seared into my memory because they made me feel so proud and appreciated. You always made me feel heard, like what I had to say was important. You weren't just waiting for your turn to talk. We didn't actually hang out a whole lot, but if we ran into each other at a party or something, we were stuck on each other and would literally talk until the sun came up. Some people you just really connect with. Problem: my listening comprehension and short-term memory is usually garbage, but I try so hard. It usually takes a repetition or two before I remember. Anybody got tips? Edit, a lot of responses, and I'm reading every single one of them. Might seem weird, but I've found that maybe repeating the last couple of words that they say helps. The only downside is it might seem you're not treated in listening and just want to talk. But it has helped improve my memory of conversation with people. If you're really into them, just straight up tell whomever you're talking to. Conversation can go in many directions, and admitting you want them to finish a thought or story, no matter how long it takes or whatever topics branch off in between, shows you care about what they have to say. Someone reading a book you recommend. That's commitment of free time and respect for your word. Also, someone reading a book. My boyfriend will sometimes be upset and start a sentence with "well you," and then takes a second and starts over with "I feel." I notice every time and I try and be the same way. I remember learning about this in elementary school and they were referred to as I messages. The goal is to focus on explaining how something is making you feel versus telling the other person what they are doing and assigning meaning to their actions for them. I feel lonely when you're on your phone while I'm talking to you vs why do you always ignore me when I'm talking to you? I remember thinking it was really stupid as a kid, but as an adult it's something I have remembered. I can be a little hot-tempered, but I try to do this when I get in an argument with my spouse. I learned in couples therapy to not say "you always / you never" or the inverse "I always / I never" because there really isn't an always / never and it creates an impasse because there's no room for defense in a blanket statement like that. If I'm mad about something you basically becomes off limits. There's no quicker way to get someone defensive than to imply something is their fault by saying you. Insert literally anything, even if you don't actually mean to attack them. And once they're on the defensive, that conversation is going nowhere. It's really difficult to own up to my feelings and say I feel, but I've always found it leads to much less conflict. When they don't make you feel guilty for occasionally wanting to do things by yourself. Edit, thanks for the silver. My guy practically kicks me out of the house the few times I've mentioned wanting to go do something with friends or just myself. It's so refreshing from my past relationships. My girlfriend, can I go up to X's apartment and drink wine and watch a movie? Me, why are you asking me? I'm not your dad, dear God. Yes, go. Edit, X was an unfortunate variable name to use here. When you're talking with someone and they remember what you're talking about or were talking about at one point. Another one is when they remember that you've done certain things with them and bring it up from time to time. Other than that, it's the normal stuff that shouldn't be overlooked or the little things, I guess. They remember what you're talking about or were talking about at one point. Okay, so I have a very good memory and I tend to remember even the most insignificant stuff someone tells me, even something like a throwaway conversation or a fact about themselves they mentioned in passing. Stuff that those people themselves probably forgot they told me right after they told me. Occasionally, those things will come up in conversation sometime later, and the response very often is "wait, how do you know that?" I was told several times to my face that that's creepy, that it makes people feel like I'm stalking them. So I stopped doing it. I pretend like I don't remember most things people tell me, even though I remember very well that Clara has a dentist appointment on Wednesday and Joey had to change a light bulb 2 nights ago. Not saying you're wrong, but too good a memory can backfire from time to time. Haha, I know this feeling. I sometimes just act like I don't know something to hide the creepy fact that I remembered such an insignificant detail. Meanwhile, I also am able to forget what I ate for dinner 4 hours ago. I had a guy tell me one time all about how excited he was to get to see his daughter, Grace, the following weekend. I worked as a bartender. After that weekend passed and he came in, I asked, "Did you have a good weekend with Grace?" And he proceeded to say I was a psycho stalker and to never let his kid's name come out of my mouth again. Yup buddy, my bad for being nice. When someone is quick to give credit and slow to place blame. Such a great sign that someone will celebrate other people and appreciate / acknowledge them, and will be really kind and benevolent when something bad happens. When someone is quick to give credit and slow to place blame. This has worked really well for me in my career. As programmers we deal with a lot of complexity, confusion, and not well-written legacy software. It's easy to make mistakes without realizing it right away, and some things are complex enough that none of us grasp the entirety of them. Immediately blaming someone else when there's a failure often backfires, because it could have been your past mistake that's only manifesting itself now. There are plenty of cases where fixing one bug causes another bug to surface. And it could be mine. So I'm very slow to assign blame to anyone, unless, as /u/Caladidi says, I realize that it's truly my mistake. Then I'm happy to say it was mine. I always like to give credit where it's due because we have difficult jobs and everyone can use the recognition. I've found that the people who steal credit from others are usually less competent. Pushing a chair in at a public establishment when you leave. What assholes don't do this? Too many in the US, for sure. Always seeing chairs left out. Learns the small things about you. My boyfriend remembered my shoe size after mentioning it one time in some random conversation with someone else. When my shoes started falling apart, he just showed up with a new pair, also having remembered that my favorites are black on black Chucks, another random convo about never being able to find what I like at Ross. He also bought me a new pair when I complained about my feet hurting. Wasn't even due to my shoes really, just a result of working 16 hours a day. He knew my dress size and surprised me with a couple really nice ones. It's also just really nice that he knows my style and tastes. Everything he has bought me has fit perfectly and I think they're stunning. I was with my ex for 4 years and when he surprised me with a new pair of shoes, over 3 years in, I was kind of shocked at how not me they were. The guy had known me for 13 years altogether and I was like, seriously, have you ever seen me in white sneakers? He bought me things he would have liked me to wear, not things that I would like. Edit, because I want to add that I was totally appreciative of the ex buying me shoes, even if they were something I would never buy for myself. I really didn't even say anything to him about them other than to thank him and tell him how sweet it was. Just reread the comment after a response and figured someone might think I was a dick about it, lol. I remember being confused about gifts that were not really me. Then I realized most of them were based on the idea of me being a generic person with standard tastes, which is okay, but confusing when I have previously spoken about my preferences. It made me wonder if my exes even knew, or cared, who I was.